Despite Uganda being highly dependent on climate-sensitive sectors such as agriculture, water, environment and tourism, the country still remains one of the countries with limited capacity for climate resilience in Africa. It's against this background that Accord, with funding from Care International in Uganda, is organizing a half-day national dialogue under the theme Enhancing Climate Resilience through Integrating Climate Change in Planning, Programming and Budgeting. This dialogue will be live on NTV and online on Thursday the 15th of October 2020 at 9 a.m. Follow the discussion on #ClimateResilience.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV. My name is Romy Busiku. Our next conversation is the Tech Knot discussion, where we get to discuss enhancing climate resilience. Enhancing climate change resilience in Uganda. Climate change remains one of the leading causes of devastation to our environment, accounting for a range of natural disasters and varying forms of vulnerabilities. And to speak to us about this and a lot more, I'm joined by Dr. Arthur Bainomgisha, the Executive Director of the Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, and he joins me right now in studio. A very good morning, Mr. Arthur Bainomgisha.
Good morning to you, my brother, and good morning, dear viewers.
It's always a pleasure to have you in this studio. Isn't it the fifth time you're making it here?
I think I've been a regular.
And there is never enough time, because these issues of climate change keep on coming in left, right, and center. So why are we organizing this national dialogue this time around?
Yes, thank you very much for having me here. We're organizing this dialogue on climate resilience, first to assess Uganda's preparedness in responding to climate change problems in this country. As you are aware, for example, in the last few months, this country experienced a lot of landslides in Bududa, in Bundubujo. The level waters of Lake Victoria were up. We got the locusts invading in northeastern Uganda, and all those
I tried to explain to some people that
yes,
that was a result of climate change,
it's a
the
result
locust
of
invasion,
climate
and they were like,
change.
no, maybe it's God's intervention or something.
It's not, yeah, it's the way the human beings have actually
Yes.
destroyed the environment. We have tampered with nature, and therefore there has been climatic changes that have actually impacted on food security, on the way, on all sectors actually that support our livelihood.
So what are some
And
of those activities, Mr. Bainomgisha?
For example, we've destroyed the forests. In this country, the forest cover has been reduced to now almost 9%, from 100 to 9%. You know, when you reduce the forest cover, and then we are dependent on fossil fuel, rising the temperatures, of course, changes the whole increasing global warming. Now, when global warming, of course, then destroying the ozone layer, so that has affected the climate patterns. Hence, we have prolonged drought in this country, but we can also have El Nino. And so the farmers are confused. It's unpredictable. You know, in 2016, 17, we had this prolonged drought that even destroyed crops, but also animals. So many animals died, and we forced people to migrate. Rivers dried
I think
up.
it started in 2013.
Around 2013.
From the south, from South Africa.
Actually, climate change is a phenomenon that has lasted for the last 20 years.
Yes.
And so the world, of course, has responded. We have now the Kyoto Protocol, the climate, the Paris Agreement, but all of these international agreements are not actually being observed. But back home here, we're also busy destroying the environment through destroying the wetlands, destroying the forest cover, and of course, poor farming systems.
You see, Dr. Arthur Bainomgisha, what our people do not know is that when Greenland actually melts in Antarctica, it affects us in Uganda here.
It does.
And when we cut down trees in Uganda here, it also affects Greenland.
Yes, it does.
It continues to melt.
Yes, it does.
So why is the focus on climate change? Let's explain to the viewer.
Yeah, the focus on climate change is that if we don't actually combat climate change, actually combating it through changing, for example, migrating from reliance on fossil energy to green technologies. Then we destroy the ozone layer, but we also increase global warming. What we are talking about, the Antarctic zones, if there is melting of glaciers, then you have the hurricanes in America that have destroyed actually
rising
that
water
country,
levels.
rising water levels. So that is very important. But that's actually in the global north. In the global south, we have prolonged droughts. We have El Ninos, which also destroy people's lives. For example, now in Bududa, people have been forced to migrate, to be resorted, but other people have died. So, but what about the people that have reversed, that have actually dropped or regressed into poverty?
Indeed.
Actually, in 2016, 2017, our poverty levels completely increased
As a result of climate
as
change.
a result of climate change. But even now, with the COVID-19, it has complicated. You know, COVID-19 was complicated with the rising levels of Lake Victoria, with locusts, and the El Nino. And the consequence of that is that actually, right, as we talk now, about 3 million Ugandans have slipped back into poverty. Now add to the other one from 19% 21. So actually many Ugandans.
3 million, that's so huge, Arthur Banomdisha, because 2019 ending, we're talking about 1.5 million people.
Yes, and this is a UNDP actually report. You can go and check.
It's doubling.
So climate change is causing our people to become poor. Climate change is causing people to go very hungry. Climate change also can cause insecurity.
Indeed.
Because when people become poor, they can become angry, and that's why I think perhaps also explains violent
in the households.
elections. You have elections. We don't know why people have behaved so violently, even within primaries of the same party, and because of perhaps of hopelessness, especially among the youth.
So now they're counting on the election to get money.
To get
from
money.
those posts.
Exactly. Money, elections is a cash cow.
So, Dr. Arthur Banomdisha, the viewer wants to know how best can we enhance climate change resilience in this country?
Yeah, the first intervention, now we have the Department of Climate Change in the Ministry of Water and Environment. Its mandate, of course, is to enforce international conventions or agreements on climate change, but also in this country we have made legislation. We have the climate change. This is still a bill in Parliament, but we also have a number of regulations and guidelines that have come up. But we also so we have a bill. So we have to curb it through legislation. We have to curb it through regulations. We have to curb it through policies. But also speaking out, like we are doing here. So speaking out so that we can conscientize, create awareness about the people, that when you cut down that tree, then you get a problem. But also talking about the role, enhanced role of National Forest Authority, increasing tree planting to increase the tree cover. Because you see, the trees are friends of man.
And not one species, remember?
Eh? You remember?
Don't plant one species. Variety of tree species.
Variety of trees.
Because I was reading some research, Dr. Arthur, and it was saying that if you plant the same tree, it can actually cause very bad effects on the environment. You have to keep on mixing different trees.
Actually, the intervention, of course, when we talk about massive tree planting, we are not talking about planting eucalyptus. Because certain species actually do well in certain places. And that's why we have the National Forest Authority to scientifically advise us which kind of species. There is also regeneration, for example. There are some places where if you protect the environment, like Bugoma that is being decimated now. Saving Bugoma doesn't mean that we need now to plant eucalyptus. It is saving that space, and actually there is regeneration. What about the wetlands, protection of the wetlands? There will be regeneration. The wetlands, for example, as we talk now, there is a river that runs through 11 districts, River Rizi, runs from Buweju district up to Lake Victoria here. It is drying up. 75% of that river is gone.
How did that campaign end? The campaign to save River Rizi?
The campaign is on, and we have now worked with the Ministry of Water and Environment. We have come up with the River Rizi water catchment restoration plan. And now it's like a business plan. We are supposed actually to implement it. So it's not actually even River Rizi. Most of our river systems are degraded and they are wetlands. So we need to restore the integrity of the wetlands. We need to conscientize the people, protect the environment, and especially the young people. If actually we can do it through with the Ministry of Education, so that the young people, we bring up a generation that knows if we don't restore and protect the environment, they have an environmental debt. They may not be able to survive in the future. And Uganda is a nature-based economy. We are dependent on agriculture. We are dependent on tourism. We are dependent on rain-fed agriculture. So
and
we
the
cannot
patterns
do
are
that.
changing.
And the
Because
patterns are
this
changing.
year, the farmers were so confused.
Yes.
The planting season became the harvesting season.
Exactly.
And the harvesting season became the planting season.
Exactly.
They are so confused.
They are so
and
confused, yes.
people in Uganda need to understand that the best way to benefit from farming and so forth is to monitor climate change.
Yes.
Irrigation. Let's talk about irrigation.
Yes.
How best can irrigation help Uganda become a food basket?
I'm glad
and
that
also combat climate change.
Yes, I'm glad that government is talking about providing support for irrigation, because this country, because of the
droughts and so
because
forth.
of the drought, because of the way we have mismanaged the environment, our agriculture cannot be dependent on rain-fed agriculture, and hence they need to diversify
Indeed.
to actual irrigation. But you see, diversification is also not going to be easy because the farmers, this country's agriculture depends on smallholder farmers. So there's a need for government to come in, and not only government, but the international community. And I'm looking at the World Bank, at the IMF,
Food Agriculture
at the
Organization.
UN, yes, Food Agriculture Organization, to support these smallholder farmers that sustain this economy to transition. For example, the whole machinery, the whole irrigation system is expensive and therefore inaccessible. So there's need for us to put, but also our budget. Actually, we need to see the budget architecture of this country to support.
Is it honoring what it needs to be done as far as the Maputo Declaration is concerned?
There is some realization in the Ministry of Finance that we need to make our budget green, but it is not yet fully achieved. We need a green economy, a green budget that helps the transition to a greener
Is it feasible,
economy.
Mr. Dr. Arthur Bainomugisha?
I think it's going to be...
We are talking about a country that
Yes.
is focusing on security. The biggest chunk of money is going to security. Can we have a budget that is totally green?
No. Of course, security is very important.
It is really important.
It is very important.
But food security
actually,
is also another issue.
Food
that we
security
need
is
to be
part
talking
actually,
about.
because we talk about human security as opposed to state security. So when we talk about human security, environmental crisis or degradation causes actually a state insecurity. So the budget itself, and COVID has forced us. You remember now that we are dependent on agriculture.
Indeed.
So there is a need to green our budget. There is a need to our Minister of Education actually to take on and educate our young people on protection of the environment, so that we have green actually citizens. Our parliament must be green. I would want to look at the manifestos for these parties that are going for elections. How green are these manifestos? So a party that wins should actually demonstrate to the citizens that is going to invest substantively in the environment.
All right, Dr.
And
Arthur
we're going
Bainomugisha, we've run out of time, but what are some of the other key issues that you expect to be discussed during this event?
The national
In a minute.
The national development, the NDP3 has provided for the transition to green economy. And all the programs and the sectors are supposed to follow that to implement the NDP3. So, but also agriculture, the Ministry of Water and Environment have developed the guidelines. So we are going to be exploring, we are going to take stock about the progress made so far in the combating of climate change. We are going to look at the study that has been done by the National Planning Authority. We are going to see the Ministry of Finance how the budget is actually responding, is a green budget.
Dr. Arthur Bainomugisha, the Executive Director of the Advocates Coalition on Development and Environment. Many thanks, as usual, for having made the time to speak to us. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.